All right. Okay. Episode 2. This is big for me. I never get to episode 2. Um, First and foremost, I actually remember to drink, which is big. I'm going to crack it open right now. I haven't, didn't even pick it up because of this stupid noise suppression thing. Ay caramba. Anyway, I just cracked open a nice cold Dr. Pepper. Um, don't know why I didn't bring a warmer drink out here. It is really, really cold out. There's about like 8-ish inches of snow on the ground, and it's very much just kind of frozen in place. Um, there are icicles hanging off my house. I'm actually changed location. I went to a different building's porch. Thought it'd be kind of fun to change up the location. I got a better view of the. I don't know if it's a better view. It's a different view of the lake. Um, it's like half frozen. It is pretty chilly though. It's a very very chilly day. I think it's around 30-ish, if not less. But I mean, it's chilly. I bundled up for this. And speaking of the weather and stuff, it's gonna snow more apparently on Saturday. I'm actually also the other big thing is normally I record these on Tuesday, so that I have plenty of time in case I mess it up or whatever. Like I just wanted to give myself more time, so I record on Tuesdays and then I upload on Friday. Today is Thursday. On Tuesday I was busy. Not that I really was busy. I had the day off because of the snow that's now on the ground. But on Tuesday I didn't get to record it. So and then on Wednesday I was busy, and now today I'm like, well, I should probably do it today because I don't really want to do it tomorrow because I do have to do things tomorrow. Um, and I don't get off work until after it actually goes out. Like I get off like just before it goes out. So not gonna work out. So I'm recording it today on Thursday. It's gonna snow on Saturday, I believe, as well. So it's gonna pile up some more. It's gonna be rough. It's gonna be a rough weekend. Living in my cabin in the woods. My cabin is also down a hill, so if we don't plow it like soon, and like if we don't like it is plowed right now, but like if we don't plow it soon enough, like I just get stuck. Like it's rough. So with that said, though, with the weather, my hands are gonna get chilly. I knew I should have brought gloves out. Oh well. The other thing for this one is for this episode of the podcast, episode 2 here, um, is so I was like, okay, I'll make another like page of notes or whatever, right? I'll make another page. Last time I got to about 15 minutes with just like a page. I could probably do that again. And instead, what I accidentally did was I did three pages of notes for this episode because I really want to talk about Gregor the Overlander, which is like a book series for children that I really like and I recently reread. The first book I read over this past summer, um, and what? Why is Jimmy calling me? Jimmy, you get called out in this episode for calling me while I'm fucking podcasting. I'm not picking that up. I do these in one take. Um, what's it called? What was I saying? Oh yeah, I reread the book one over the summer because I was like, oh, I'm gonna read a book because that's funny. So I read a book and I was like, I read a book, and then I was like, well, since I read the first book of 5, I kind of want to read the other 5. So I looked around and I couldn't find them. So then I bought, or my mom bought for Christmas 2 and 3 for me, and then I bought 4 and 5. So then recently, as we were reading in school and stuff, I brought book 2, and then I banged it out in one day. And so, Friday, that was like this past Friday, right? Book 2 gone. And then on Monday, I brought book 3 because I had so much fun reading. And then I banged out book 3 on Monday. And then on Tuesday, I read most of book 4. Or Monday, I didn't quite finish book 3. I think I finished it like uh, Tuesday morning, and then I started book 4 on Tuesday. And then basically what happened was that on Friday, or on well, not on Friday, what am I saying? Book 2 I read on Friday. Then on Monday I read most of book 3. Finished it Tuesday morning. Tuesday I read most of book 4, and then I finished it book 4 on Tuesday, and then Wednesday I banged out all of book 5. It was crazy. Um, I'm not gonna talk about them all. Is really that's like my entire plan for this. It's all I have. I just have notes on notes on notes of just this book series because it's been rattling around in my head for the past like 2 weeks, and I got to tell somebody about it because they're really good. Um, kind of mega spoilers for the books, but also I think I'm not really gonna get too sidetracked to do too much damage here. But you should read them. They're kind of bangers. Gregor the Overlander, the Underlander Chronicles. They go crazy. They're by Suzanne Collins, same author as the person who wrote The Hunger Games, critically acclaimed, et cetera, et cetera. Not that I've read them. I read the parody of The Hunger Games, like the Starving Games or whatever, like the book parody. And I was like, that's funny. And then otherwise, besides cultural osmosis, I've got nothing. So these are my point of reference for her work, and it's fantastic. And I'm really pissed that there's no animated show to go with this or something. I will talk about that later, though. That's at the end. Okay, we're gonna start with book one. Okay, Gregor the Overlander, a classic, right? Before I reread the books, most of what I remembered takes place in book one. Like most of what I remember from the series took place in book one, and then I remembered how the series ended, but that was about it. Like I was like, okay, so I got it. Like this is what I remember. And honestly, banger single story. It follows, Gregor, our titular hero, uh, and his younger sister Boots. Boots being 2, Gregor being 11. Their ages. Um, I'll talk about it later, but Gregor being 11 makes no fucking sense in these books. Like, I get it, he's supposed to be a young kid, but like, Jesus Christ, just make him like 13 or 14. And being 11 is insane. But point being, Gregor being 11, and then his younger sister Boots, they fall down a hole in their apartment building's dry laundry room. Right there, it's a relatively poor family. It's actually a major plot point in the series that they're like kind of on the poorer side. But they fall in the hole. And then they fall down and they're in this new place and it's dark and they're like, what in the world's going on down here? And they run into these giant cockroaches that are kind of big. And they're like, hey, would you like us to lead you to the humans? And Gregor's like, thank God there's people down here besides these giant fucking cockroaches. So he follows him along. They get to the human city of Regalia. There's like something going on. And it kind of kicks off like the adventure, right? The adventure, he gets there. They're like, hey, you're the overlander from above searching for your dad. Your dad did come through here. Hoorah. That's just like in this prophecy. Let's go fulfill the prophecy. And so like they gather all the people and they're like, okay, well let's gather all the people and then we'll go on this hoorah adventure. So they gather up a couple people from each of the species that are down there. They gather up some gnawers, which are the rats. They grab some, what is it, the spinners, the spiders. They grab a couple cockroaches. They got 2 of them. They have 2 humans. Uh, 2 overland, or what is it, 2 overlanders, 2 underlanders, like 2 from above, 2 from below. Like they gather the whole crew, they go on this adventure, right? They go to whatever the place is, and the whole thing is gonna like save the world, right? Save the underland. The underland's gonna be saved. Wahoo! And Gregor was named the warrior, and Boots is named the princess by the cockroaches. They all love her a lot for some unknown reason. And they're like, oh, she'd be the princess. And then there's also another princess, though, who joined us on this journey, Luxa. Luxa? I have no idea. I don't know. It's all, I just read. But Luxa, I'm going to say Luxa, I think. Luxa is the princess of Regalia. She's also 11, hints for later, put 2 and 2 together. Um, but she's the princess, and her parents are dead, and Regalia is currently ruled by a group of kind of elders, a council of elders, until she becomes of age at 16 to kind of take over the city and stuff. So Vicus being her grandfather and Solven being her grandmother, they're like kind of 2 people that are like vaguely in charge, and then there's another council and stuff. So her going on adventures and stuff is typically forbidden, but she ends up going on them all anyway because like fun. But they go on this adventure. Flyers is the other thing that go on the adventure. Flyers being the bats. It's very fun. They get to fly bats all the time. It's sick as fuck. But they go on this adventure, and a lot of stuff happens. A lot of it isn't terribly important, but of the 2 underlanders that go, they are Luxa and then Henry. Henry being Luxa's cousin, and they make a lot of jokes, and they're very like familiarly close, and like they're obviously like have spent a lot of time together and have fun, and they trust each other a lot. And in terms of the big thing to take away from all this really is like there's a lot of stuff that happens in this, they go on the prophecy and then they fulfill the prophecy and they go back home. Like, it's pretty standard fare. But in terms of what I've been consuming a lot of recently, which is a lot of anime and manga because I'm stupid, um, is there's the ever pervasive term of isekai, and isekai being when you go to another world and then something happens, right? And a lot of modern isekai have really driven the reincarnation trope to death, where someone dies, ends up in a new world with some sort of skill, and then the knowledge of their past life, and they're able to kind of like cheat their way to victory the whole time. And that's really boring. And rereading Gregor the Overlander made me realize how much I missed not having the reincarnation trope and having the looming possibility and likelihood of having to return home. Because like Gregor falls down and like the first thing he does is he tries to escape because he's like, oh, I gotta get back home. Like I have to. Like I have to get back home before my mom gets worried that I'm gone. Like this is bad. I have to get home. And then even when he finishes the adventure and he's made all these new friends and all this stuff has happened, he goes home. He goes home at the end. And him going home, he realizes he's like, there's a life for me down here that I could choose, but I'm gonna go home because like that's where I'm needed. Because like he finds his dad on the adventure and he gets back, and then he and his dad now pretty sick from being he was captured by the rats and they kept him for a while. It's rough out here, but he goes back with his dad and him and Boots, and he gets back home to his mom and his other younger sister Lizzie, and like they get back, and like that's a big moment for like the end of the book is very joyous, but it makes it clear that like it makes it clear that Gregor could have stayed, and it also makes it clear with a tongue-in-cheek kind of way where it's like he's like, oh, well, bye forever, and then Luxa's like, well, what about the prophecy of Bane? And then he's like, what? And then Vicus is like, well, see you later, and he's like, what do you mean? So like it's very clear that he's going to come back, but like the tug the tug and what is it, tug and pull and tug, I don't know, like the tug of war between the overland version of Gregor and the underland version of Gregor is very apparent from the start of the series, and it only grows to be a more like difficult choice of where he belongs, and it's so good. And I'm it's such a refreshing like take. Not even a take. It's just refreshing to see a story do it rather than going the route of like, oh well, fuck it, he died, now he's stuck there, and he figured out some cheat skill, and now he's gonna fuck a bunch of women or whatever. I should stop swearing. This episode's gonna be stupid. Um, that is some good drink. But the end of the book is also really good because it very much it starts it very cleverly starts out Luxa as kind of unlikable as the what will become the female love interest of our story, but it starts out very unlikable, but due to not necessarily her own moral compass being wrong, but being closely associated with someone whose moral compass is wrong, and her having to grow a lot before Gregor and Luxa even realize they have opinions of each other that are good, until like book 4 essentially. Like it's crazy how long it takes for them to like realize that they care for each other, and it makes sense because they like barely see each other. Like they see each other on a fucking prophecy once every goddamn 6 months. It's crazy. But like starting her out so unlikable and then turning her into someone so much more likable later is very clever, very lovely. Drip feed me that content, dude. But the end of book 1, this is what I mean by like I'm gonna get too sidetracked to like be able to fucking meaningfully do any damage to the spoilers. Like it's just like I'm gonna give like the main plot points, but like everything else is also really good. Like it's just so good. It's really pretty too. I just realized how pretty it was here. I'm just looking at all the snow and the lake, and it's really nice. I'm very glad that I live here all of a sudden. Um, but anyway, the end of book 1 is essentially Henry was defecting to the Rat King, and the Rat King, it's all a trap, and the Rat King's going to try to do a surprise attack on Regalia and kill everybody or whatever. And Henry is like, haha, I've got you in my grasp. And Gregor is like, dude, what the heck are you doing? This is stupid. I hate you, Henry. Anyway, I'm going to follow what the prophecy says because it says something, 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 look before you leap, something, something, whatever. So he runs and jumps off of a cliff, essentially. And all the rats follow, and they don't jump off the cliff, but the cliff is very unstable. So the whole thing breaks and crumbles. And like he barely even jumps, like the whole thing just collapses. And all these rats, including the Rat King and him and Henry, are falling to their deaths, right? And Gregor's like fine with this. He's like, whatever. I interpreted the prophecy at the last moment. I'm gonna do the thing. I'm gonna save the day, and then Boots and my dad can go back home. And like my loss, oh well. And he jumps right. And Henry's betrayal is, obviously heartbreaking to Luxa, and it does a lot of emotional damage to a lot of people in the Underland. But um, his betrayal is followed by the betrayal of Ares, essentially. Ares being Henry's bond. Flyers or bats and humans, Underlanders will make bonds, right? And then they'll like save each other, and like they're bonds for life. It's like marriage, but for homies and interspecies. It's dope as fuck, is what it is. So Henry and Ares, this giant black bat, are like bonds, right? And when Henry is falling and Gregor is falling, Ares chooses to let his bond die, let Henry splatter on the rocks to save Gregor. And Henry's betrayal is so overshadowed by when someone else is calling me. Why are people calling me today? I'll have to call a lot of people back after this. Um, but what's it called? The Henry's betrayal is so overshadowed by Ares's saving of Gregor and him very desperately telling Gregor in like a hushed voice as they fly up from this cavern. He just repeats, just I did not know. Just like it's that part is so much more burned into my brain than Henry's betrayal. Like I forget that part, to be honest. Like I just know it happened because Ares saves Gregor instead of Henry. Like that's like the desperation of Ares's I did not know, and then leading to before Gregor goes home, he bonds with Ares to save Ares from eternal fucking death or whatever because he let his bond die, even though his bond was psycho and nuts. Um, like it's just a very it's a very based moment. Um, book two. I really like the addition of characters here. That we book two adds characters and deepens characters. Book one is a lot of like introduction to the Underland, blah 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 bullshit, and it's like I get it, it has to happen, it's exposition, but because of that, it's kind of one of the weaker books because there's kind of like a lot of other stuff going on. You don't get to focus on the characters. Book two is very much a character book, and it adds some characters that return, and like it very much adds to it. And we get a lot of what is it? Book two adds I wrote down Howard and Twitch Tip, but I'm pretty sure Marith also comes up in this book. Marith is based as fuck. Howard is another one of uh, what's Lux's cousins, but on her mom's side instead. Um, and his family, his siblings are very like aloof and obnoxious, and he very much tries to distance himself from that. Twitch Tip, another rat. So in the first book, Rip Red is the big rat that like is the coolest, and he remains to be kind of the coolest, which is on purpose. But he's very much based and very much like the angry uncle of the group. He's just very like he has so much knowledge, and he hates everybody for not being smart. Uh, but he's also like a really good fighter, and will he does what he has to do to make the thing happen, but he will never betray his own morals. Like he's very reliable if you know what to expect from him. Like he's a very good character in that sense. But he brings along Twitch Tip for this new adventure, book two, right? What we're doing is Gregor and the Prophecy of Bane. I didn't write these down, the titles. I could get them wrong. But Gregor and the Prophecy of Bane, based as fuck. So Howard is introduced. Twitch Tip is introduced. Twitch Tip can smell colors. Like she's got such a good scent on her. She can just smell a sniffer. She can just sniff anything. Like her scent is insane. She's called a scent seer. It's awesome. And she's really fun. And they go on this. They have to go by boat across the giant ocean because the bats won't make it to this labyrinth to find the Bane, which is a white rat, which will eclipse the size of normal rats in the Underland, which is like 6 feet tall, and he's gonna take over the world or whatever, right? And that's what the Bane is, and they have to go and find the Bane in this labyrinth of caves across the waterway and kill him, right? That's the goal. So they go on this adventure, and during the adventure, um, there is a growing bond between Gregor and Ares, which is really nice because Ares is kind of outcasted by a lot of the Underlanders and the Flyers because they like he let his bond die. Like that's even though they say he saved the Underland, like the Overlander, like he saved the warrior, he saved Gregor. Like that's super cool, but like you still let your bond die. That's kind of fucked up. And so like a lot of people just don't talk to him, and it's like it's very sad. And Gregor, gets angry at him every now, like gets angry at him for wanting him to stay, and like it's very much a tense beginning, and their bond grows greatly over the course of this book, and it's awesome. Um, Luxa and Gregor also bond a little bit in this one. Luxa joins the journey late at the perfect time so that her bat cannot fly her back. Like she lands on the boat and she's like, oops, I'm stuck now, based. And so she's there. And so like they bond a bit. Um, what's it called? Rip Red actually doesn't go on this adventure. So like Twitch Tip takes over as the rat that's fun, and she is very fun. Um, and with that, it starts the kind of repeated thing where Gregor will essentially, because he's met a nice version of most of the species in the Underland, he just immediately assumes he's like if they're on our team, they're friends. Like I don't care. Like I'm not gonna like treat them weird because they're another species because we have histories of wrongdoings or whatever. I'm just gonna treat them as a friend. Like I don't care. And that's most shown because like that's mostly shown with like book one with the cockroaches. Everyone thinks they're stupid, but they're very like they are stupid, yes, but like they're not, they don't they don't miss when you're making fun of them. Like they still notice, and like they will very much throw themselves in the face of danger if it means that they think that they can save someone. Like they're still very much people, and they just don't talk right, and like they aren't as intelligent as others, but like they're still very much uh like intelligent creatures. It's very sweet that there's so much time put into building up the cockroaches. And then with Gregory, like he's very much like immediately friendly with Twitch Tip. Not really. He starts off kind of being mean, but like he very quickly comes over that and he's like, oh, I'm just being stupid. And he is very friendly towards her. And uh the most obvious scene of that is when uh they accidentally get towards a whirlpool and basically they save one of the boats but not the other, and Twitch Tip is the only one that hasn't been saved, and they're just gonna let her die. And then Gregor's just like, fuck it, I'll put on a life jacket and jump. Sue me, bro, save me, you need me. And he just goes for it, and he saves her, and it's very based. And after that, like Twitch Tip and Gregor just get along, and it's very nice. um do 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 the growing, yeah, and that's part of like the growing bond of Gregor for the allied rats, and it grows in book 3 as well, Curse of the Warm Bloods. But also the in this book, the willingness to just nuke characters is crazy, because like one of the first things that happens on this journey, it's a very boring journey for like bits and pieces of it. I'm gonna burp. Ugh, I hope that, oh, that did pick up. That sounded really unfortunate. But the willingness to just nuke characters, like, so Howard is on this adventure, right? Howard's on this adventure. He's a cousin of Luxa. He's trying his best to be his own person and be like just like do his thing. And Marith is here too. Marith is based. I remember now that Marith is here because of what happens next. But essentially, they find this island with these mites on it, and they're passing it, and they're like, "Oh, very cool. That's a new island. That's not supposed to be here. Anyone want to go check it out?" And Pandora, Howard's bat, is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go check it out." And she's flying around doing her thing, and she's like, "Yep, it's safe." And then Ares goes and is about to join her when suddenly all the mites just eat her alive immediately, just like 10 like not even 10 seconds, like strip her to the bone, like her like skeleton falls from the sky. It's very based, very cartoonish in a way, but like very based, right? Just nuked the character, gone. And Howard, and like the immediacy of the danger there is just like it's that character's dead. You guys are too close. Ares is getting chased by mites. and then he dives in the water to get away from them. But right, so he is immediately unsafe. The entire team of boats that is approaching the island to have to pass it is now unsafe. Like the immediacy of the danger is crazy. It happens a couple times. Like there's Gregor's on watch at one point and he falls asleep and then a giant squid attacks and it's like, oh geez. And then like when they get to the labyrinth, the rats there wake up these giant serpents and it's like immediately the danger goes from like 0 to 100 real quick. And that immediacy of danger is very fun. um it's just so fun. And in that final attack at the labyrinth, right, where the rats ambush them, they like they get like Gregor gets separated from both Luxa and Boots, essentially the two most important people that he cared about on that journey. Like obviously he cares about everyone on the journey, but like those two were the most important to him. Not that he really knew how important Luxa was to him yet, but uh, and with the loss of Boots, um, Gregor, they're with another prophecy, and Gregor is like, oh, like Boots is gone. Like there goes anything I care about anymore. I'm gonna kill the Bane. Like I'm like he steals his heart. He's like, okay, I have no more qualms, nothing tying me left to this world. My 2-year-old sister is dead. I'm gonna go fuck some shit up. And so he basically takes what's left of his party. He goes, okay, you are the only one that's able to take care of hurt people, and there are multiple hurt people. Take everyone back. Me, Ares, my bond, and Twitch Tip, who knows the layout of the labyrinth. We're gonna go in and go find the Bane, and we're gonna go kill him. And Howard is like, oh no, not Howard. I think no, it is Howard because Marith is beat up. Howard is like, no, and then Gregor's like, yes, I'll fight you. And then he's like, shit. Not exactly how it goes, but basically is how it goes. And he sends them back, and then it's just him and Ares and Twitch Tip. And Twitch Tip very quickly runs out of steam. She's hurt bad, so he leaves her in a tunnel to go find the Bane because he knows where the Bane is. And when they find the Bane, right, and once again, Gregor thinks basically his life is ended, right? He's like, I can't go home to my mom without Boots. That's fucked up. Like my life without Boots is over. Like it's everything's done. And so he he goes into the place, he finds two rats that fight to the death, and then he's like, oh, the Bane is down this path. Like I know it is, I can hear it. And then he goes in to kill it, and it's a baby. Banger twist, TBH, and it's a baby. And so he saves it and brings it. He's like, oh, wait a second, Ares, do you know where we are? And they're like, oh yeah, we're near the Deadlands. And he's like, this is kind of like where where Rip Red said his base was. And then Ares is like, yeah. And he's like, let's go to their base. So he goes over to Rip Red's base, and Rip Red has like, 12 rats with him or whatever. And Rip Red's like, what the fuck are you doing here? I thought you were supposed to be killing a Bane. And Gregor's like, yep. Anyway, I've interpreted the prophecy the way that I want to. I'm giving you the Bane. Killing it would break my heart. And so I can't kill it. So it's your problem now. You raise it to be good. And Rip Red's like, ballsy. Ballsy as heck. How are you going to get out of this one? So then he goes back to Regalia, and he gets immediately locked up for not killing the Bane for treason. And then the cockroaches, some cockroaches show up with Boots, based as heck. Temp or Luxa found a Twitch Tip, who then both of them fought off an army of rats to then let Temp, the cockroach, save Boots. They made it pretty far, but then Temp kind of sort of died for a bit, and he had two other cockroaches take her all the way to Regalia. So she's saved. Awesome. Sweet. They still managed to interpret the prophecy correctly, or as correctly as they can, given the circumstances. And they're like, oh, yeah, this still works out. And I forget how they get home. What happens? I honestly don't remember. Who cares? Point being is the baby Bane is set up for now a future villain essentially, and that's really cool. And then also when he gets home with Boots, he's like, I am so sorry, Mom. and he goes over to Mrs. Cormassey's. Mrs. Cormassey is a character introduced in book 1, but then expanded on in book 2 in the beginning, where he goes over on Saturdays basically to help her out, and then she gives him money, and he's like, perfect, awesome, my family's poor, I need money. And Mrs. Cormassey is also like a tarot card reader. She's like a kind of like a crazy old lady, and I love her for it. But she keeps asking him about like where he's been, and he keeps being like, "Oh, I had the flu," and she's like, "Your story sucks ass. You keep disappearing for weeks at a time." And at the end of book 2, I believe it's book 2. It could be honestly the end of book 3, but I think it's the end of book 2. I didn't check. Mrs. Cormassey is like, "I got you these shoes, by the way. I found them in the closet. They used to be my son's, like 20 years ago." And he's like, "I only have weird Underlander shoes on." And he thinks about it. And he's like, "Mrs. Cormassey, can you keep it? Can you keep a secret?" It's based as heck. And then Mrs. Cormassey becomes the guardian angel of the group, and it's awesome. And it's so awesome. I love Mrs. Cormassey. She's like kind of crazy, and she doesn't show up enough, but oh my gosh, she's awesome. But book 2, I don't know. Book 2 is really fun because the law also like Luxa doesn't get found until like way later. Like Luxa is lost, like considered dead. Book 2, it's crazy how insane that is. But and when Gregor leaves, when he's given the chance to leave, and he's like, "I'm gonna take this before they trap me here forever because we killed the Bane or whatever, or we didn't kill the Bane," and like he's out of there. But he's like, "Hey, Vicus, if word of your granddaughter Luxa, um, any news, please, for the love of God, tell me." And he gets no news for a while, right? Book 3 starts. He's like, he's down bad. He wants to get back to Regalia and just like, tell me anything. Tell me the news, bro. And book 3, honestly, I want to say book 3 is the weakest. I want to say book 3 is the weakest, but I don't know if it is. I truly, I think book 1 and 3 are equal in terms of how weak they are, but they're also really good books by their own right. Like, and also book 3 helps set up a lot of what happens in book 4 and 5. Like, it's hard to say what's the weakest book, but I think it's book 3 because I took a long drag for my soda. The thing with book 3 is that the prophecy, right? He gets called back. He's like, he's finally gets a prophecy, and it's basically a cry for help. It's like, "Hey, come down, and like we're fucked." And so he goes down with Boots and his mom, because mom's like, "I'm not letting you fucking go by yourself, you dumbass. You keep getting sucked down on these adventures. We're going down for one meeting, and then we're out of here." And so he goes down. And they're like, "Hey, it's the curse of the warm bloods, and we need to go find a cure." And so there's a big prophecy, and they're like, "Okay, here's the big prophecy. Okay, we're figuring it out. Okay, we have to go on this big adventure to go find this field of starshade in this, evil jungle." Cool. The problem is that the big twist of this one is that they interpreted the prophecy wrong, and actually, the plague that is, the plague that's coming is entirely man-made. Essentially, it's entirely man-made, and they already have the cure, and it was all part of just like a bioweapon. Essentially, it's basically a bioweapon that accidentally got out, and they've been trying to cover up that it was actually a bioweapon. And Solvent was the head of that, and the scientist that she had working on it just like bad circumstances happened, and it got out wrong. And while technically, like, yeah, I got it wrong and it wasn't supposed to happen, like, you made a bioweapon. That's crazy. And like the start of this, like from the start of the story, it's very clear that like the humans are in the wrong a lot of the time. Like, they're very rarely the good guys. And I think it's book 4 actually that they reveal it, but like the killers is like, so all of the Underland creatures have their own little funny names, where it's like the Gnars and I know it's Gnars, I'm just like saying Gnaw. Like, it's the Gnars, and it's the Nibblers, and which are the mice, and then there's like the Crawlers, which are the cockroaches. But then like for the humans, it's just like they have like the other Underland creatures are just like, yeah, they're the killers because they came in and just committed homicide. And it's like, oh, that's crazy. Well, not homicide, I guess. I guess it was just murder. But like that, it's crazy. Um, like, and it very much starts out with them being like, "That's." I feel like the humans aren't always right. Like, because like they go to this meeting and they all have to get shaked down in like this yellow powder, and they're like, "Oh, why is this yellow powder?" And they're like, "Oh, because it gets rid of the fleas, and the fleas carry the disease. And the rats are like, "You fucking have a power that gets rid of the fleas? We've been just dying out there, and you just have this powder laying around?" And they're like, "Yeah, oops." And then like they get bullied into oblivion until they give the powder away. It's like ridiculous how like mean the humans are. But essentially, right, there's three victims of the plague so far, right? Three, like in regalia. There's a lot of victims of the warm blood plague otherwise, but of in regalia, there's only three, and those three are Howard, Nike, a bat, and Ares. And Ares has the worst of it. Ares is like can barely breathe, can't move, like truly like losing skin, not losing skin, losing fur, has these giant purple bumps. Like it's bad, bad. And they're in the meeting, right? They're talking about the meeting, and of course, right in the middle of this meeting, of all the creatures that are supposed to, have this meeting because of the prophecy, um, they're there, and then this bat with very clearly with the disease comes down, and it comes into the city, and then it plummets right in the middle of this meeting, and then it like cracks neck on impact, just fucking immediately dead, hits the ground. And because stupidly some people torch it, right? Because they're like, oh, dead body with a plague, got to torch it. Um, they torch it, and then all the fleas come off of it. So they all evacuate. They douse themselves in powder, and they're like, okay, I think we're good. And then turns out Gregor's mom now has the plague. Oopsie daisy. So now his mom's stuck until they can treat the plague, which essentially means that Gregor has to go on this stupid journey to go find the Starshade. Except they already have the cure, and they're just being assholes about it. So Gregor and his group of merry friends have to go find the jungle and do this insane task that's ultimately meaningless, right? Which is so aggravating the second time you read it. Because you're like, I know the twist. I know who's the bad guys. It's the humans. Problem with that is the journey itself is kind of cool. And the people that we meet along the way and the different viewpoints and stuff, like the themes are really good. Because the whole theme of book three is essentially, first off, the humans aren't always right. They're not always in the right. And the other part is that fighting the wars is largely unproductive, which is true. Like fighting war, like it is generally unproductive. And so, what do I have here? Blah, 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 blah. Like the sort of like so the like the main characters that get introduced, right? So the journey is going to be, it's going to be. I'm moving my lap around a little bit. Ugh. But the journey is going to be Gregor and Rip Red, right? And then two other rats, and then I think it's Lap Blood and Mange. I don't remember. And then those two rats, and then there's going to be Gregor, and then there's going to be uh, Boots and Temp, and I think that's, and then Solvent being the grandma who event is revealed to be like the leader of the secret council group that's into making bioweapons. Solvent, and then a couple of bats or whatever, right? I think it's Nike. I think Howard's there. Maybe, yeah, no, it's definitely Howard. Howard's there. Howard's base as hell. He's like the medic of the group. He's awesome. He just has more experience and stuff because he's older, because he's like a real person. And like Nike is there again. Did I say Boots? Anyway, so like it's gonna be that group, and they show up, and Narissa, who is I forgot to explain Narissa. Narissa is Luxa's older cousin, but on the wrong side, so she can't inherit the throne unless Luxa dies. So Luxa being MIA, assumed dead. Narissa is now queen, and so Narissa's like, oh, by the way, you're gonna go on this adventure. But you get to start. Go to this place that's really dangerous at the start of the jungle, and I've arranged a guide. And they're like, what? Because Narissa sees like visions and stuff, and like everyone kind of thinks she's crazy, and she's very frail, so like she fits the part. And it's like, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go, and then we're gonna wait for a bit, and if no one shows up, that's fine. So uh, they show up, and then basically they accidentally get into this like little what is it? Boots throws a ball, and then a lizard eats it, and the lizard is like and like frills its like things up, and then Boots is like bitch, and then like uses her hands and is like blah, blah, blah. And then uh this guy Hamnet hops off of the lizard's back and he's like, that's hilarious, you're hilarious. Frill the lizard, give me the balls, let me give it back to Boots, that's hilarious. And Hamnet's like, hey, how you guys doing? And Hamnet is the son of, or one of the like the children, one of the son of Vicus and Solvent, and the other son being the one, or son being the one that ruled, uh, was Lux's parent. So like he's her uncle. And Hamnet's like, hey, what y'all up to? And they're like, and Vicus is like, you're alive? What? And you live in the jungle? What? Are you for real? I thought you were dead. You're my son. Please come home. And Vicus is like the sweetest old man of all time. And he just wants everything to be a peaceful thing all the time. And he's just like, oh my God, you're welcome home anytime. Please come home. And before he does any of that, Hamlet's like, oh, by the way, if Solvent's even here, I'm leaving. Like, get her the fuck out of my sight. Oh, I really hope someone doesn't drive down the hill. That'd be really awkward. I can hear cars in the distance. Anyway, but Solvent leaves, and he's like, dude, that's crazy. Um, I might have to pause this. I'm like truly losing it. It's fine. I think someone parked up the hill. I hope they don't hear me. That'd be really awkward. I'd feel really awkward about that. Oh well. Um, but essentially, right, it's the introduction of Hamnet is really cool because he is essentially this guy that um he's like he refuses to go back to Regalia because he tells Vicus this before Vicus leaves. He goes, I do no more harm. And I do no more harm is in reference to that when he was like when he was at Regalia, Solvent, being the leader of the army and like being like in charge and stuff, like ordered him to do different raids and stuff, and he did war, and he was whatever. But he it's hard for him to do things like that because he very much is like a peace guy. So like he went to do a raid and he's like, okay, did the raid, very cool. But as a backup, he's starting to lose and he's like, okay, we got a backup. I'm gonna hit this dike. It's gonna open. It's gonna flood a little bit of this plain, and Baba Booey, well, the tide will turn. So he hits the dike, and then all of the surrounding walls kind of also break. Oopsie daisy! And not only are his enemies, the rats, like now at a disadvantage, but also catches some of the bats and some of the humans. And it also goes into the caves and kills some of the rat pups, which was not part of the plan. And like he just basically does irreparable damage, and he goes crazy from like the madness. Like he tries to save everybody, as many people as he can. Like he doesn't care who it is. He just wants to save lives from his mistake. And then he gets knocked out before he can like kill him, like hurt himself. So and then he kind of goes mad, and then he goes into the jungle. And in the jungle, he meets an overlander and has a kid with her, and then she dies. And then he's like, well, I have an overlander underlander hybrid child. That was a fun noise. Something just fell over there. But he's like, oh, so now I have this kid, and I'm in the jungle, and I have this lizard, and this child when I left was like, hey, if you are in the company of a lizard and a halflander child, you should go to this place at this time. And he's like, well, fuck it, might as well. So he goes there, and that's how he's like recruited for this mission, which is crazy. Um, and then his son, as I said, Hazard, which is a hilarious name, um, is his son, and he's also very much like Peace Man, but he's also a linguist, which is cool. He very much is. He picks up on the different languages of the Underland very easily, and he's very cool. He's like 8. So like he's like he can talk Hisser and he can talk Gnar and he can talk a little bit of Bat, but not very because it's too high pitched. And he learns Crawler on the adventure. It's very fun. Um, and the theme of the jungle though is that you touch nothing, you do nothing, don't even think about it. Like it's very much a like the jungle is the jungle, don't fuck with it. And so anytime they try to use violence, it always backfires. And like woohoo. Eventually, though, they do find Luxa in the jungle with some nibblers, some mice, and she almost lets Gregor die a little bit in quicksand. But it's because she doesn't really trust anyone at that moment besides the mice. And eventually, though, Howard and Gregor convince her to like let them help her, and especially Aurora, her bond, her bat, and they pop a wing back into a socket. Like they do the thing. And Luxa joined us as the party, and when they leave the Nibblers, she gives them her crown, and it's like, hey, if you ever need anything from me, take the like present the crown to a guard that you like a human scout. They will bring it back to me. I will do whatever I can to help. And so that sets up a later plot point. And then when they finally find the Star Shade, eventually, they find it, and then the ants come, the cutters, the ants come, and they absolutely wreck shop and destroy all of it. And in that moment, they kind of lose they're like, gosh darn it, we lost. All rats. And then speaking of rats, our good friend Rip Red is like, okay, imagine we interpreted this stupid thing wrong, this stupid prophecy. What if? And then they pop off a little bit, and they're like, holy crap, it's already back there. And then so they go back, and Luxa just walks in and is like, hey, I'm not dead. Anyway, you guys are all frauds, and you created a bioweapon. I hate you all. And they're like, for real? And then Naviv, who is the head doctor who is in charge of it all, and he was like, I was just told to do it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. And then Naviv gets thrown off a cliff while people are in the hospital. And it's like, oh, geez, she was just murdered for that. And Solvent is like on trial, or is going to be on trial. And it's like a whole thing. And Gregor goes home. He's like, okay, I'm out of here. Bye. But he can't take his mom because his mom isn't better yet. So he goes back home, and he has to be like, okay, hi, Mrs. Cormassi. We need help. We don't got a mom for right now. They got to take care of her because she got the plague. Um, and then book 4 happens, right? So book 4 is essentially like it jumps forward a bit because he basically, it's like, hey, by the way, I kept visiting the Underland. I keep visiting, and I keep being hanging out with people, doing some training, visiting my mom, doing the thing. And the book 4 really starts, it really starts where Gregor is like, Hazard is like, hey, you want to come to my birthday party? And he's like, hey, when's cool, yeah, when's your birthday party? He's like, tomorrow. And he's like, for real? And he's like, well, I don't know when my birthday is, so we decided it's tomorrow. And he's like, okay, very cool. So he goes to the birthday party, and he brings a Polaroid camera from Mrs. Cormassi, which is based, and he takes a couple pictures. They have a good time, and it's like the end of chapter 2, and is like very much burned in my memory now because I just read it, but I think it's going to be there for a while because I think it's chapter 2. It might be chapter 1, honestly, but chapter 2 kind of like ends with, first off, the second shoe drops, right? An Overlander scout, or no, an Underlander scout from a bat drops the crown that Luxa gave the Nibblers, and is like, Luxa, the Nibbler told me you know what this meant. And she was like, it means that I don't know where I put my crown. And she like laughs it off. And in that moment as well, like right when it drops, right, he's like it's written as like, two things happened. Number 1, crown fell. Number 2, Gregor realized Luxa was pretty. And it's like, oh, the romance plot's about to kick in. Book 4 of 5. That's so fun. And this all happens at the end of a dance. Like a whole dance happens, and Gregor's been off to the side the whole time when all the dancing happens. But for this one, they needed a partner, and Luxa was like, "Hazard said that you had to be my partner." They do that a lot. There's very much this person said that you have to do this thing with me. That's like, it's very very silly. But it's very much like Hazard's party is the most peaceful time I think in any of the books. Like it's just truly like the most peaceful time, and like they're taking pictures and they're having fun and they're finally happy. And then Gregor and Luxa are like, okay, we got the crown. We have to go figure out what the heck this means. We're going to go sneak out. So they sneak out, and they find a dead, mouse. And so then they come back and they're like, shoot, rats. And so then they're like, okay. So then they're like, okay, we got to go on. We got to, like, they come back and they do this thing and they, do the whatever. And they use the secret patches to get out the first time. It's very fun. And then they're like, okay, we need an excuse to bring a lot of food on this adventure. We're going on a picnic. I got it. We're going on a picnic. So they, they're about to go on their picnic or whatever. And then Howard shows up and he's like, what you doing? Why you got so much food? And they're like, we're going on a picnic. And he's like, well, that sounds great. I'd love to join. And Gregor's like, we're going on a date. And then Howard's like, what's a date? And he's like, when you want to go with like one specific person, and he's like, fingers together, like, and it's very silly. And then Howard is like, probably not. He's like, interesting. And then Hazard shows up or something, and Boots and everyone. But the point being is that everyone ends up on this adventure. Um, so Howard ends up on this adventure with Nike, the Bat, who is like kind of like his new bond. Nike is being the princess of the Bat world, essentially. It's very cool. How many more like characters end up recurring, and my hands are so like becoming numb. Um, like the lies that they make is very silly. And like the lies that they make is just very silly. I was reading. I'm sorry for the pause. I was reading my notes, but like the lies they make is very silly, and it kind of wraps up this whole group of them in this adventure. Being so it's Ares and Gregor, and then Luxa and Aurora, and then Howard and Nike. Those being like the main group, and then there's also Hazard. Hazard been brought along because he's like, oh, you're going on a picnic without me, and Lux is like, no, I was gonna go get you, I promise. And then Boots is there and Temp is there. And so like they've got this whole group. And then Hazard is brings Athena being the bat that he intends to bond with. So it's like this whole group of people now going on this picnic, which is actually not a picnic, but actually they're going on a Hail Mary mission to the font where Howard lives, to the to the Nibbler colony there to see if they have any answers. And like it's like this whole thing. And then when they get there, they go through a tunnel, and then an avalanche happens, and then they get stuck on the other side. So they're on this big freaking long way home, and it's everything goes wrong, and they find Rip Red at the end of this, or in like the middle of this, Rip Red having gone missing, and also Rip Red giving Gregor some what's it called, like echolocation lessons, and then Ripper goes missing, and they're like, "Oh, well, maybe he just went to go kill the Bane because the Bane is now grown up and he's like kind of a loose cannon. He's big and he's strong and whatever." But they find Rip Red in a hole with his teeth all locked up because they keep growing. That's rats' teeth keep growing, so then they break them, and then it's very fun. And they find him, and then they're on this adventure, and the whole thing is they're trying to find where the Nibblers went. Like, they're like, "Why are the mice gone? Like we can't even figure out what happened to them." This book's called The Marks of Secret, and each time they go to find the Nibblers, they just keep finding this line straight down, and then it's got a little curve on the end. It's the scythe. The Marks of Secret being this like old language of the Underland that Hazard knows because he lived in the jungle, and that's like where it's used more, I guess. But the Marks of Secret being just like marks, and that symbol being the scythe means death, right? If you see this, it means death. So the Nibblers, obviously, some of them know that they're being led to like they're being killed, like they're going to be killed, and um, what they end up finding is this group of mice has been led through this tunnel, and they're like, okay, weird. And they get to the bottom of the tunnel, and then this giant pit, they see a bunch of dead mice, and they're like, holy crap, they just walked them off of this cliff and they killed them. And then they find one that's living, and they pull it out and they treat it. And also when they're doing that, Luxa does this funny vow of revenge against the rats for killing all the mice. And what's it called? And all of the creatures around hear it, and that kind of gets sent back to Regalia. So everyone in the Underland knows that she made this crazy vow, um, and of basically war against the rats. And I don't even know if they've found Rip Red at this point. I think they find him when they come back up out of the like the loop, because they have to go really far down and then come back up. And then when they come back up, right, they find Rip Red, and they're like, "Hey, Rip Red, here's the lowdown." And they're like, "Okay," and they keep going. And then they're like, okay, I see a bunch of nibblers, but there's also a bunch of rats. We can't just surprise attack them. What do we do? And they're waiting, and they're kind of thinking, and they're like, ooh, what are we gonna do? And then because like all the mice are in this hole, right, by this volcano, and they're like, okay, well, we probably have time of like we'll have a warning sign before it erupts. Like we can just go save them. And then the rats, once all of the mice are through, they just close this door, like this stone, they move this rock into place. And they're like, okay, weird. And they're about to go help when suddenly there's a big air current going past like their cave or whatever. And oh, Jesus, one sec. I have an actual call. Okay, and I'm back. Okay. Um, that was a phone call that I needed to take. What was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying. Oh yeah. So they're all in the room, and the rats close the door, and then what happens is that essentially the volcano starts leaking gas, and it's like, oh gosh, they're getting gassed, and then you're like, oh god, this is just the Nazis again, and you realize that it's just the Nazis again because what's happening is the the Bane is like, hey, guess what? Guess who is the cause of all of our problems? It's the Nibblers, and the Nibblers are just like being scapegoated entirely for the issues of the rats, and it's crazy. And it's literally just the Nazis again. And then they realize that the song that they were singing in the Hazard's birthday party, which is just an old nursery rhyme for the Regalians, is actually a prophecy. And so they solve the prophecy, and they solve the prophecy, and then they try to leave, and then they get caught in some currents, and then because the currents have the evil gas in them, Thalia, being the youngest of the bats, breathes too much, and then she dies, but also the volcano erupts, and it kind of sends them all crazy, and Gregor almost dies, but he doesn't. And um like a lot of people get hurt on this adventure, like way too many people get hurt on this adventure, and it's like Howard makes the joke that they're a flying hospital, and it's true, like so many people get hurt on this adventure. And Thalia dies, which is very sad, because Thalia is just like so sweet. And then basically they're at a point, right? They're at this point, they're like, wow, all of this bad stuff has happened. The volcano's erupted. We've solved the prophecy. Gregor, you have to go back. And he's like, what do you mean I have to go back to Regalia? Like, I want to help you guys. I want to help you do the thing, right? I want to save the Nibblers. Like, I want to be part of this. And Rip Red is like, no, you have to go back. You have to read the prophecy of time, and then you're useful because you do not have his sword. And they're like, he's like, what sword? And he's like, the warrior sword is very clearly Mr. Sandwich being the guy who founded the Underland, brought a bunch of people down here in the 1600s. His sword. You need it. You're the warrior. Go read the prophecy of time. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. I'm not going to be the one to break this news to you. So he brings all of the wounded essentially back to uh, he brings all of the wounded back to Regalia, and then he goes gets the sword, and then Vicus is like, "You ready?" And Gregor's like, "Yep, I'm ready." And so book 5 starts with a bang with Gregor on the floor reading the prophecy of time, which literally just says, "And the warrior is dead" or whatever. And uh, the prophecy calling for Gregor's death is cool. Like you know that like the plot armor probably exists, that he's probably not going to die, but there's still enough like plausible deniability from the other people that have died or gotten pretty gravely wounded that you're like, they could kill him. Like that'd be kind of base. Like they could kill him. But it calls for Gregor's death, but also the Bane's death. Like they're both going to die in this thing. And this one's called the Code of Claw. The whole time they're trying to decipher this code that the rats are using, which is once again very Nazi. It's literally just the Enigma code again, or the Enigma machine again. But they're all trying to crack this code, right? And book 5 has a lot of very slow moments in between all the battles, which I really appreciate. It's really fun. And essentially, like he gets back, and they treat him, and they're like, "Oh, okay." Anyway, we're gonna put Sullivan's like, "Hey, I'm out of jail," and he's like, "Why are you out of jail?" And they're like, "Well, it's war, so I'm in charge of the army, so I get to come out, and my trial's been postponed." And Gregor's like, "I hate you a lot." And then Sullivan gives him bodyguards, and then he has to very quickly, and he very quickly just evades the bodyguards and sneaks out of a secret passage, and he goes back to the battle. Like he's immediately out there again, and he gets back to the battle, and he gets there and he helps out with Ares, and they're just like wrecking shop, and they escape down this tunnel. They go through this tar field or oil slick, and then they end up, they cross this river, and then Lux is there, and he's like, "Oh my God, Luxa, you're still alive!" And she's like, "I'm barely alive," and she's like watching down the tunnel. And the second that their last person has come through, they fire flaming arrows into the oil slick, and it lights up, and it's sick. It's a very fun set piece. And then Luxa, it like collapses and like coughs up blood, and they're like, and then Howard is like, "You," or not Howard, it's someone else, is like, "Oh my God, you dumb idiot. Please, for the love of God, go back home. We have to get you help. You've been in the fumes for too long. You're literally, your lungs are falling apart." And so Gregor is like, "I am aware that I just got here. However, me and Ares are good because we've only been here for a little bit. We will bring her back. It's fine." So they bring her back, and it's very sweet, and like he props her up, and it's very nice. And then they get back, and Luxa gets, put in the thing, and then Gregor's like, I'm good. What do you need me to do? He's like, what? I need something. And he's like, I need something to do. I need something to do. And they're like, oh, you want to help wash these nibbler babies? Because we've got like a giant influx of nibblers that we got to take care of that have ash all over them and they're like kind of sick. And he's like, I got it. I'll wash the babies. And he washes the babies. And then someone shows up and they're like, hey, you can go see Luxa in the hospital. And he's like, oh, for real? And he goes, and then his bodyguards are back, and he's like, oh, hey guys. And then they slam him into a wall once they're on like a back route, and then they throw him in the dungeon, and it's hilarious. And then while in the dungeon, um, he figures out he cracks echolocation and figures it out, which is based multitasking. But uh, like that happens, and then when he's out of it eventually, um, he is brought to the war council or whatever, and then Vic is like, you were back, and then Sullivan's like, who let him out of the dungeon? And Vic is like, the dungeon. And it's really ridiculous. And oh my gosh, I have so many notes. But the reason that they let him stay is because um in his pocket for a while now he's been carrying this picture from the Hazard's birthday party, of him and Luxa dancing, which is really sweet. He just has it in his pocket. And then Marith calls it out. Marith being, oh my God, Marith is a darling this entire time. I love Marith. Marith, he's so cool. But eventually he's like, you don't have to trap him in the dungeon. The reason he went back to the battle, it's already good. He's not going to leave. And Sullivan's like, how do you know? And he's like, check his pocket. And Gregor's like, you wouldn't. And then, yeah, so then they're like, yeah, he's in love with Luxa. And he's like, dude, why would you say that? Stop it. And it's really silly. It's really sweet. And then when he does eventually get to go see Luxa again, like the next time, um, he's like, yeah, they threw me in the dungeon, but it's okay. They're not gonna throw me in there again. And she's like, why? And then he gets called away, and he's like, well, this is why. And he pulls out the picture and he puts it down, and then as he leaves, he sees her smile, and it's very cute. Um, it's very cute. The battles in this are crazy. They're just really good. The fights with the Bane are really good. I don't know. It's just like a very good one. The diggers are the moles essentially of this world where they thought they were all gone. Like Regalia, the human city, actually used to be the home of the moles, but then Sandwich just poisoned the water supply and killed them all and ran them off, which makes the humans look even worse, of course. Um, uh, Lizzie, Gregor's other sister, comes down from above to give bad news. He's like, oh no, dad's had relapses and grandma's in the hospital and Mrs. Cormassi's doing her best, but I can't do it, dude. Because Lizzie is like really nervous and she's like 10. And she comes down and she's really good at codes though, so she is swapped for the princess that's going to crack the code, because it's like says like the princess is going to crack the code. And so since Boots is the princess to the cockroaches, that makes Lizzie a princess, and then they're cracking the code, and she eventually does. It's very good. um and then they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do the surprise attack because we have the code. We know where they're basing. We're going to surprise attack them. It's going to be awesome. And Solvent's there, and Solvent's going to go to the spiders really quick to make sure that they're on their side. And Solvent leaves, and then Vicus and a whole group of them, they're all there. And then uh, one of them cracks a code, and they're like, oh, Solvent's going to get ambushed by the rats. They know that they're on their way. They're going to ambush them. And uh, Gregor's like, oh, okay, well, we'll go save them. And they're like, we can't. That'll prove that we've broken the code. And then they're gonna know, and then they're gonna switch locations, but the whole plan falls apart. So then Solvent, they get news shortly after that Solvent has been killed, which is really fun because I hate Solvent, but Solvent dying is kind of like the last straw for Vicus, because Vicus is so sweet. And he's just had this run of horrible things happening to his family. And so he has a stroke. Literally, like actually, he has a stroke and he has to get shipped out of there. Um, Also in this book, Rip Red finally starts showing like other sides to him rather than just being like a callous older person. And he's very nice to Lizzie because he reminds her of one of his children that died in the battle that Hamnet uh, accidentally killed people in, which is really good because not good because it's bad, but like Rip Red's partner and then both of his kid, or like all of his kids, died in that battle. Rip Red wasn't there, and when Rip Red is on the adventure in the jungle, by the way, Hamnet dies. Did I ever mention that? Hamnet dies and Hazard comes home to live. It doesn't matter. I'm well past that point. Um, but Hamnet and Rip Red do get along. Like they get along even though like all this has happened. It's because Rip Red knows the torment that Hamnet went through. Like like he gets it. But Rip Red, shows a lot of love to Lizzie, and it's very cute. Um, blah blah blah. They do the whole battle thing. Um, Gregor battles the Bane. Before he battles the Bane, Rip Red's like, "Hey, by the way, I think Sandwich's prophecies are full of shit." And Gregor's like, "What? What do you mean? You always like make it work, though." And he's like, "Yeah, I have to make it work. Otherwise, other people will come up with stupider reasons as to why the prophecy works. Then I have to convince everyone that they were wrong. That it's actually the other way that's smarter." And he's like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense for you, actually." And he's like, "Yeah, I know. Anyway, point being is it says you'll die, but like just kill the Bane. You're smarter than it. Just kill it. Easy peasy. You're goaded with the sauce." And he's like, "Okay, okay." And so when they do the whole battle thing, um, the second battle with the Bane is really good. The first battle is really good, but like the second one's really good. And the second battle's really good, but Ares is killed very tragically. The Bane is killed, not so tragically. Killed. I hate that guy. Before he does the final battle, like he rips off the person that's been feeding him all of the information that he's used to do his like Nazi uprising. He just kills her. Like he bites off her head, and he's like, "Where'd she go?" It's like he's like truly unhinged. Um, and Gregor's like, "Oh, well, I'm dead." And then he gets saved by the fireflies, which are the most obnoxious of the creatures in the Underland. And it's very funny that they save him. Um, but they do. They like bring him back, and then like they win the war. It's very funny. Um, blah, 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 when he gets back, his hand is like casted up, and it's because he's got a death grip on one of Ares's claws, and then he has to physically like soak it and let go of Ares, and it's very sad and very touching. But there's a lot of scenes like that in this book that are slow and like meant as a pause to like let Gregor or Luxa or both of them have like a little bit of time together, because literally it's a war going on, and like when they have the time to just be kids, it's very heartbreaking because you know that they're just kids in this giant war, and you also know that even if one of them serves, like even if they both survive, which they likely won't because of this entire war going on, that Gregor is going to go back home, and his mother from like literally the start of book 3 has been hell-bent on just moving the entire family, just the whole thing, to what like to West Virginia or Virginia or whatever, to a farm down there, because she wants to get as far away from the Underland as possible because her kids keep ending up on these adventures. And so like he knows that if he survives and Luxa survive, like he's probably still not going to see her again. And so it's very heartbreaking, like their tragic romance. It's really funny. Um, like obviously the best scene of it is before they go out for like the big war. Luxa and Gregor go down to the museum, which is where all of the Underlanders keep all the Overlander stuff, and they take pictures together like they're in a little like camera booth, and it's very cute. And then they kiss, and it's very nice. And then you remember that they're 12, and you're like, this is weird. Um, and what's it called? Like at the end after they've won the battle, everyone recovers very slowly, and it makes a point. It doesn't like reading through it. It doesn't take a lot of time to read through it, but like it makes the point of how long it takes for them to get better. And I wish they expanded on it a little bit, but like I get why it's like the falling action or whatever. And in this, right, Rip Red is supposedly dead. Uh, they think that they found his corpse or like his bones, more mites, and they think that he's dead, and they're about to do the formal treaty of or formal surrender of the rats. And Luxa's doing this whole thing, and Gregor's there, and he's like, "Yep, I'm cool," and stuff, and he and out of a hole in the ground from the diggers, from the whole thing, Rip Red crawls his ass out, fully like half dead, and he's like, "I'm the representative of the rats," and the other rats there are like, "What? You're alive?" And everyone's like, "You're alive?" And he's like, "I'm alive." And then Narissa's like, "Oh, he's got a second scar in his face, and it makes an X, just like that prophecy." And then Ripper's like, "Mm-hmm, you got it." And then they start arguing about the stuff, and they kind of threaten war again, Luxa and Rip Red, because they're like doing the surrender. And they're both like, "Hey, Gregor, tell him who's right. And Gregor's like, what the? We just had the war. We just did the whole war thing. What are you talking about? You just saw all those people die. Did we not just learn it? Did we not learn anything? So he takes his sword and he breaks it and he's like, warrior dead. And they're like, the prophecy. And it's very fun. Kind of like, it's very making fun of the prophecies at the end, which is very fun. And then uh, Luxa and Ripper look at each other and they're like, you know, it'd be really funny. And then they bond. They do like the whole bonding ceremony, which is really fun. And then go to a they go to a big round table to like decide all of this stuff for after the war. And then when everyone's mad at everybody, they're like, okay, there's four representative of each of us here. Or Lizzie has this idea, but it's four representative of everyone here. Everyone gets a vote. You get to vote for who you want on the other people's like to be their one representative. So then the only people that are left are all like the reasonable like medical people. Like it's like Marith is there, who's like a based guy, and then like Nike is. It's just all of the based people are left, and it's very funny. Um, and then they return home. Like uh, Gregor's mom, Boots, him, Lizzie, his dad's there. Came down to like visit because they were taking so long, and he like visited and stuff. And like they all go home, and then Lizzie's like, I don't want to go to Virginia. I think like we're tied to the Underland in some way. I don't think we can just run away from it. And his mom's like has kind of like a point, like a view shift because she was down there for so long and she saw all of it, and she's like, we're gonna talk about it. And then the book kind of, and it is when they go to leave, like they're leaving, and Luxa gets a view of the night sky, and she looks at Gregor, and they share a kiss or whatever, and then they crawl out, and then she's like, bye. And then he says bye, and like they leave forever, essentially. Like what they think will be the last time they see each other. And they return home. And then like there's just a moment of kind of calm in the overland, which is now mundane. And like I skipped over a lot of stuff, but like it's like now what? I like was that the right choice to go home? And like that part of isekai, like the choice to go home after such a fantastic adventure and having that second path opened for you, the the choice to go home is a challenging one and is a very interesting. Um, anyway, it'd make a really good 5 season anime, and by that I mean 4 seasons, but the fourth season is 24 episodes or 26 episodes. Would be a two core season because the books 4 and 5 are essentially one giant adventure. And it'd be so good. But the main changes, like I only have like a few nitpicks with this series overall. Like it's made for kids, and like that's fine. Um, but the only real issues I have is, and like the changes I would make to make it into like a movie or not movie, or like a series would be to age up Gregor and Luxa to like not 11, like just make them like 14, like not just like you can make them 16, and then when they age 1 year over the course of these books, then they're still not 18 yet, and then 18 is just the age that Luxa becomes queen or whatever. Like just age them up a little bit. Them being 11 is so weird because like the way that they talk and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, just make them slightly older. Like I don't care. Like I'm not that invested in like I'm invested in this love story and I'd like it to be less weird, you know? Why are they 11? That's weird. That's weird, right? Um the romance part of it is, I think, the most well part of the most some of the most interesting parts, but also some of like the worst, because like I think that they share too many kisses. Like straight up. Like there's the one kiss in the museum. I think that one's goaded because it's the first kiss. And then they're implied to share another on a picnic before the big agreement of the surrender of the rats. And then there's the goodbye kiss. And I think honestly only having the one kiss would be a stronger story. The one kiss in the museum. I think that's a better, like to only show one kiss is better, you know? And then also on that picnic when they're implied to like make out or whatever, I don't know. They say I love you, and I think it's better if they don't, to be honest. I think leaving it, because they have a conversation where they're like, where Gregor struggles to say I love you, and then Luxa stops him and is like, I know, I do too. And like just leaving it at that is so much better. It's just so much better because the I love you felt really forced in where it was, and it was so bad. And then also just if I was making a series, like expand on the slower moments. Like just there's a lot of slower moments that don't get enough time in the book, but it makes sense because it's a book. But if you had a visual media to go along with it, I think it'd go a long way to expand on those slow moments. Like I think episode 1 like of the show should, rather than the speed at which the book goes, would have like at the halfway point commercial break would be where they fall. But I think expanding it to be them falling at the end of episode 1 would be better. Like giving more time to the mundane of his normal world, I think would be better for the story, because then having those other 12 episodes or whatever it is to the everything else would be better. I just think it'd be better. I don't know how to make things. I think that's literally it though. I think I had this idea. It'd be really funny if the animation for it was like, I mean, like whatever. I don't care what style it is, but for the any part in the dark is if you just did like black and white, like black background, white outlines of what Gregor could see, and then as he learns echolocation, like it gets better. It'd be really dope. I think it'd be really cool. Um, and also it'd be the best isekai in years because it actually has themes that go along with isekai, and it like because it like actually makes the choice of going home and like makes that a core central question of the characters. um but yeah, that's my recap and I don't know, it's not really a retrospective. I mostly just recapped, to be honest, but it's very based. I'm a huge fan of Gregor the Overlander. I think it was good. um you should read it if this didn't spoil it enough for you. There's a lot that I just did not cover. There's entire characters that I forgot about entirely. Like there's just so much that goes on in these things. Like I barely talked about Boots. Boots is like the best character on God, just like Gigo MF, like on God for real. But like I don't know, it's a very good. It's I'm just surprised at how few complaints I have with it. Is mostly what it is. Like a lot of times I have a lot of complaints with like media and stuff, and this one I just don't have a lot of. Like a lot of it, it's just very well paced. I like the weakest link. I can't even decide if it's the first book or the third book, and that's a really good issue to have because like your first book in theory should be your weakest. Like if I talk about like the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, or not, maybe not the Kung Fu Panda trilogy because that's obviously the third movie's the weakest, but like of the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, like the weakest part of a trilogy is usually either the first or the third, because the first one you have to set up a lot of exposition, and the third one you have to close it. The second one's always kind of the best, because it doesn't need exposition. It doesn't need to like wrap off the whole story. Like second one's kind of the go-to one. So if the first one is your worst one in a book of five, right, like, or in like a series of five, like that makes sense. Where it's like that's the weakest one because you had to set it up, and then the rest of them are bangers. Awesome. But to have the third one be kind of the weakest is kind of interesting because that means there's a lot to explore. Because like that means your ending's really strong, and that means your beginning is also pretty strong. Because like usually, like and like I think it's mostly due to the part where the prophecy ends up being like the journey that they go on ultimately didn't matter so much. Like they found Luxor, like a lot of good things came from it. They found Hamnet, he died, but they found Hazard, who ends up being a really good, strong supporting character. Like I think like even though it is the weakest, I wouldn't change it because like it really bolsters the story in a lot of ways. But anyway, that's my recap and retrospective. Oh, also I forgot to mention in the fifth book, it's so because Rip Red is like, hey, you're not gonna die on this thing. The prophecies are bullshit. It's heavily implied that he gave himself the scar to make the scars on his face make an X so that it would fit the prophecy. It's really funny. Um, yeah, Rip Red's a hoot, but no, it's just a very fun series, and I think if you are like me and read a lot of trash, reading this, which is it's a simple read, it's made for like middle schoolers, like obviously, like it's a very easy read. It's 5 books. It's very good. It's just like a banger. It's like all eights and nines out of tens. I don't know. There might be a 10 out of 10 in there somewhere. I don't know which one, but there's probably one. And it's like it's very straightforward. It's very good. I don't know. I like it a lot. Dinner tonight. I don't know. I'm switching topics really quick. Dinner tonight though, I think is gonna be something with the ground pork in my fridge because I think it if I don't use it today, it's bad. It goes bad, which is not good. So I'm gonna try to use that tonight. I think. I don't know what I'm gonna make with it though. I got no idea. I might just make hot dogs and throw out the ground beef for all. Like I don't know. I kind of want hot dogs. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna make. I'm gonna use the ground pork though. Oh, last night though, we made me and my boyfriend we made what's it called? what are those things called? Boneless wings, where we kind of like we cut up chicken and then we breaded it and we fried it like in oil and then we tossed it in sauce. Like we did the whole thing and it was actually really good. It was really good. But tonight, go back to basics. Use the ground pork. Make something boring. Maybe I'll just make chili. Honestly, I had meatloaf the other night, so I can't default to meatloaf. But I think maybe, maybe I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, have a good one. I've been yapping for an hour 20 and I barely covered. I mean, there's 5 books. I guess it makes sense that I barely covered it. But yeah, I like them a lot. Hope you cared. This is an episode 2 though. Big for me. I never make it past episode 1. But yeah, episode 2. That's a wrap. Have a good one.